Welcome to this video. In this video, we will examine the earning call dataset, and we're going to create a more focused summary using entities. We'll be using named entity extraction as provided in the spaCy package. I'm going to import the needed packages, and then I'm going to load the language model. This links to all of the named entities that the spaCy package provides. For example, we have entities corresponding to people's name, places name, other kind of locations, product, events, work of art, languages, date and time, money, percent, and so on and so forth. Now these entities provide us a way to extract only part of the documents that pertain to entities of interest. For instance, maybe we are interested in looking at what companies are discussing in terms of new products, events, and also money if one is interested in investments or contracts. We're going to focus just for example as money and product as two selected entities. Let's load the data set. And once again, in this data set, the column text contains the full text of these earning calls. We're going to use the same strategy that we used before. We're going to work on one of these texts and then isolate the code in a function that we can apply on the remaining ones. First, let's get the first one. So first row and the second column, because we're looking at text. The next step is to create a document by wrapping up text to the language model itself. Once this is done, spaCy will analyze the text, and this gives us access to many of the functions underlying the different natural language processing techniques that spaCy provides. For example, in this case, we're interested in named entities. So we can do doc.ent's, and this will give us a list of the named entities in this text. Now notice that this doesn't show us what the named entity type is. What we can do, we can go for each one of these named entities. For instance, the first one, although it shows up as a string, this is a named entity object, right? And so what we can do for this one, we can do text, and that will give us the text, and label underscore, which will give us the label, which is GPE, general place entity in this case. So what we're going to do here, we're going to get the text and the label for each one of these entities. So we can do something like this. We can say, okay, maybe I want to put them in a list of tuples. So I'm going to put the entity text and the entity label for each entity in doc.ents. It basically gives me this list as a list of tuples, and then I can select the one that I am interested in. Let's call this list entities. Now I can create a pandas data frame out of this list, or I can use plain Python to select the entities of interest. For instance, let's say I am interested in product and money, as the question is asking us for. So I'm going to create a set of these entities. So selected entities is going to be a set of money and product. Next, I can have another list comprehension to select text. So I'm going to get text for text and label in entities. So basically give me the text, right? But here is my if condition here. If label is in selected entities. There's probably a typo here. Let's make it selected entity. And this will give me only the money and product in this earning call. And you can see that spaCy recognizes numbers, including numbers with text, which is really important here because in many of these earning calls, we don't expect a well-formatted number. So if we're doing regular expressions, we're going to miss on things like million, for instance, or approximately, or something of that nature. And obviously this can change, like if somebody is interested in event, for instance, we can do that here, and we can look at the events mentioned in this earning call. Okay, so what I'm going to do next, I'm going to put all of these steps in one function. Let's call this function summarize. And this function will take the text, and it will also take the selected entities. I'm going to have this parameter to have a default value, so if by default is going to be money and product, but this also gives me the chance of calling the function and providing another parameter value, such as, for instance, events. Let's put this code here. Again, the key point is to link text to text so that we don't have a copy paste mistake. And this is linked here to document.entities. And next I'm going to return this list. So the next step is to summarize. For instance, I can summarize the first one just to double check my work. That's log 01. Those are the money and product mentioned in the first earning call. I can do the second one, and that will summarize the second earning call, including money and product. We don't see many products here. It could be that there are no product names, and also could be that Spacey is not recognizing all product names, which is a possibility here. That's obviously a product name here. We can see that. 3, 4, and so on and so forth. So once we have this isolated in a function, what we can do here, we can create another column in our data frame. Let's call it summary. And I'm going to apply my function summarize in this on the column here. Now this will take a while, but it will give me the summary of each one of these earning calls in terms of looking at only numbers and products. Now, what we notice here is that in some of these named entities are repeated. It probably makes sense to count how many instances of each and then rank them by count. This probably gives me a more kind of concise summary, because the more frequent ones are probably more important. If the same product name is repeated 10 times, it's a different story than if it's only mentioned one. Similarly, if the same number is coined multiple times, it's probably an indicator that this is an important number. So let's take a look here at this. This list actually can be further improved. We can count how many times the same text is mentioned by using the same technique that we used in the last time. We can convert it to a series, and then we do value counts. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going actually to provide an optional parameter called top n, which will be maybe 10 or 15. And then I'm going to create this extra step. I'm going to assign this one to be filtered, for instance. That's the filtering step. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a series around filtered. I'm going to call value counts, and I'm going to return only the top n of these value count. Let's make this one return top n. I'm going to make top n 10. Top n 10 is fine. I don't want to see many of these results here. Let's repeat the process one more time. And this time when I look at the head, I should see probably the missing step is to convert it to a dictionary, because then pandas will try to integrate these in a data frame, and we'll see a data frame that contains many nulls here. So I'm going to convert this one to dictionary. All right. So you can see that here, some of them have the same product repeated multiple times and the same number mentioned multiple times. Again, what's nice about this function is that now we can look at people's name rather than only money or product. So we can do a lambda x function, or lambda text in this case, and I'm going to summarize text, but let's say I'm interested in person names, so selected entity will be persons in this case. Top n should take the default value, so it's not an issue, and this will give me another summary of my name of my earning calls. I should see now the people who are mentioned more frequently in these earning calls. And probably it makes sense that many of these frequently mentioned people are some of the executives on the earning calls, but it's a good idea actually to look at these people names. Those are some of the important people that were mentioned multiple times. Again, pandas is shortening the output by default, so I can convert this to a list to see the full list of people in each one of them. So this starts to give us some interesting insight. For instance, although the first earning call was at Zoe Kitchen, we can see that people from other companies were mentioned, such as person from a Deutsche Bank or from another company. That kind of starts giving us an idea about relationships in between people and different companies mentioned from other companies' earning calls.